Hi everyone, good evening. Can you guys hear me okay?
I can hear you okay.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank
that's
you.
perfect. All right, we'll just give it a minute for people to join in. Thank you so much for being on time, and we'll start in just a minute.
Did you want me to put myself on mute?
I can do that for you, Susan. Thank you. All right. To respect people's time, I really would like to start at this moment. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. It's a beautiful day, and yet you're here to learn. So thank you so much for being here. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me okay? You can see my screen. Perfect. Thanks, everybody. All right. Let me Okay. We'll begin by acknowledging that BC Bereavement Helpline is on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Kikite First Nation, along with Halkomilim speaking peoples and other Coast Salish nations. I invite you to take a moment to think about the land you're on and the indigenous peoples who have cared for it for generations. In our work at BCBH, we recognize that grief and loss are part of every community's story, including Indigenous communities, and we are grateful to share this space together in the spirit of care and learning. All right. Move on. So the agenda for today is I wanted to let you guys know why we are here and why we even have this webinar. I'll provide a short introduction of our wonderful speaker for today. And tonight we're going to be learning grief in the lens of nutrition. And we'll be providing some of the BCBH resources. And if time permits, we'll provide some time for Q&A. All right, so as to why we are here today, so this webinar is in compassionate support of the Public Service Ministry of, okay, just give me one sec. All right. So this is in support of the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General, specifically for the Community Safety and Victim Services branch. So we are having this in response to the recent event that happened in Vancouver, the Lapu-Lapu tragedy. And this is our way, BCBH way of helping people, navigate their grief and provide education about grief as well. So without further ado, let me introduce to you our speaker. Vera Decena is a Vancouver-based nutrition counselor and grief-informed health practitioner. After losing her partner, she became deeply aware of how grief affects the body, impacting energy, appetite, and metabolism. Through her practice at Colorful Nutrition, she offers one-on-one support and community education that blends emotional wellness with nutritional care. Vera's work is rooted in the belief that the body remembers what words cannot always speak, and that food can be both a mirror and a medicine in times of grief. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Vera Decena, go ahead, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Thank you, Happy, for that. I'm just going to share my screen. So just one moment, please. Okay, perfect. So we got that sorted. Just want to make sure that's okay.
Yep, you can see it. Perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. Thank you again for taking time out of your schedules to come join me in learning more about how grief can take a toll on our physical body and how grief can reshape our relationship to food and energy as well. I'm incredibly excited to be here today to present on what I believe are important insights on what happens to our physical body during the grieving process and the impact it may have if otherwise not noticed. I also want to thank both Happy and BCBH for inviting me to speak about something I am now deeply and passionately committed to sharing, the grieving body. It's become the thread that runs through everything I do now. So this moment, getting to share what I've learned throughout my own grieving journey with you means a whole lot. And my hope is that you leave this webinar feeling empowered to trust in your body more, whether you're currently grieving or not. First off, before I begin any further, I wanted to acknowledge the lands that I'm currently situated on, and I implore you to do the same as well, wherever you are across BC. I am currently living in Vancouver, which is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Being a first-generation Filipina immigrant myself, I'm eternally grateful to be able to play, learn, weep, and hold community on these beautiful lands. I also wanted to acknowledge the need for healing and reconciliation. I truly believe we can learn a lot more about grief and life through the stewards of our lands. A bit about myself. Hi, again, my name is Vera. I'm a grief-informed nutrition counselor and health and wellness coach at Colorful Nutrition, which is a newly formed health practice born from my own experience with loss. In my grief, I noticed a significant gap in how the health system responds to those who are grieving. Hence, Colorful was created to bridge that gap by teaming up with both mental and physical health professionals to support the bereaved with a whole body approach. At its heart, Colorful is about tending to both the body and the mind, helping people stay connected to their health as they move through the complex terrain of grief. So how my food, nutrition, and health journey came about really started for well over a decade ago now, for what first started as a curiosity about metabolism, or in other words, energy balance. This resulted in me going to UBC to further my curiosity at the Faculty of Land and Food Systems, majoring in health science under their food, nutrition, and health program. As part of the program, I am incredibly fortunate to have volunteered and worked at several inspiring community-based initiatives, from working at food banks to teaching kids in their classrooms on how to grow and cook the food they've grown, establishing community gardens at the downtown east side, joining nutrition literacy programs for marginalized communities, researching for the Shuswap School District on how food security impacts their students and their learning capabilities. I've also created recipes and infographics for BC Special Olympics participants, joined farmers markets, and was a kitchen coordinator at a women's shelter at one point. All this to show, if there is food involved, you best believe I'll be there. Despite my initial eagerness to learn the science behind how we process what we eat, I completely fell in love with community involvement with food and how food in of itself also shapes our communities as well. One community food program I was fortunate to be part of gave us the chance to deepen our understanding of individual food types, learn how to combine ingredients thoughtfully, and navigate the grocery store with more confidence. Each session ended with us cooking together as a group, building important practical culinary skills, and then sitting down to share the joy of eating what we had prepared in the last couple of hours together. Honestly, one of the best parts of choosing this career path in food is that I get to eat my work. More importantly, these meals created space for connection. We built community, often among people who we may not have crossed paths otherwise, which becomes more obvious to me that food is a powerful way to bond. Through this work, I came to deeply understand how the social determinants of health, factors like housing, income, childhood experiences, and culture, have a major influence on our health outcomes far beyond personal choice, which later on we'll explore how these same determinants can also shape how someone grieves and the kind of support they may need. While I was on my way to completing my final semester and pursuing a career in food security initiatives, sadly, my life changed drastically when my partner of 8 years passed away unexpectedly. In that intensity of that loss, I was surprised to find all the health knowledge I had built over the years no longer worked the way it used to. My body felt uncomfortable and unfamiliar. I couldn't rely on the same health routines I had previously built. I needed to find new ways to regulate, to nourish, and to better care for myself while navigating this deep emotional and physical pain. It quickly became clear that grief added a new layer of complexity to my health journey. And when I went looking for resources, I found very few that spoke on the specifics of how grief impacts the physical body, as well as how to support the grieving body through intimate moments of intense mourning. And even after Lapu Lapu Day, the tragedy that happened here in Vancouver reminded me of that grief I was once familiar with. But this grief was different. I didn't have the words for it at the time, and I may never find them. Just a deep feeling of unease. It brought up questions I hadn't asked before about community safety. And leaving an hour just before the incident left me thinking how this hits too close to home. So I truly feel for those who are deeply impacted by a vicious attack that I feel like could have been easily prevented. That's when I realized there's a major gap in health recommendations. As some of you may already know, grief changes everything. Our sleep, appetite, energy levels, and stress response all shift. And yet there's very little guidance on how to care for the body during grief. And not just after that lengthy period of time when the emotional intensity subsides. I'm also talking about times during the raw emotional whirlwind of accepting our new reality after loss. Most health recommendations that we hear assume a stable starting point. But what about when we're in acute grief, when everything feels foggy and the body no longer responds the way that it used to? How do you care for yourself in that vulnerable, disoriented, and depleted state when you're too exhausted to cook, too anxious to sleep, too numb to know what your body needs? This in between space is often overlooked, and that's where support is needed the most. So just to reiterate my last point on the previous slide, the pain point that I've come across in my own grief and health journey is recognizing that our current health recommendations often assume that a person is starting from a place of stability, physically, emotionally, and environmentally. But grief disrupts that foundation. It throws the nervous system, sleep, appetite, and energy into chaos, making it incredibly difficult to follow conventional health advice that's built for regulated bodies. Also, to add to the hardships of navigating the uncertainties of grief, grief can also feel incredibly isolating, both from the public's aversion to grief and death, and from a medical system standpoint as well. Many people don't realize how draining loss can be on the body, and society tends to underestimate the physical toll of emotional pain. And grief rarely impacts just one person. The emotional and physical pain radiates outwards when a death occurs. The effects ripple through families, friendships, and communities. Each death deeply affects, on average, about 4 people, and sometimes as many as 9, according to other research findings. This means far more people are quietly navigating disrupted bodies and minds than most health conversations acknowledge. And there are non-death losses that can be part of this as well. Immigration, loss of job, any life event that has unpredictability attached is a type of grief as well. During the time of my most intense grief, after countless sleepless nights, heavy days, and desperate cries for life to return to how it used to be, I eventually came to the painful realization that I was no longer that same person, and neither was my body. With the loss of my partner came the loss of who I was before his death. That version of Vera and her ways of being no longer existed. It took time to fully understand that, and even longer to accept it. I had to relearn what this new body needed to get through each dreaded day, and during the time of intense grief, what my body needed to process that pain, all while trying to reintegrate into a world that unexpectedly became so different from what it was like before. As a young widow, I wanted to learn as much as I could about what happened to me physically. As I've mentioned before, through my research, of which I found not many grief resources specifically dive deep into the physiological turmoil that the body carries as we're processing the chaos that moves through our minds. Most of the grief resources focus more on the psychological, social, and emotional aspects, but not very many go deep into the physical. Interestingly, at a time when I felt completely discouraged that maybe I was the only one experiencing a drastic change in my physical body, Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, who also wrote the book, The Grieving Brain, came out with the book, The Grieving Body, last February of this year. And with that reignited my need to share my learnings with the world. Hence, is a source of inspiration for this presentation, and most likely the reason why I'm presenting to you all today. Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor, if some of you may not know, is a well-renowned grief researcher and a psycho-neuro-immuno-endocrinologist. Gosh, try saying that 3 times really fast. Basically a tongue twister of words to illustrate that she is a major, major nerd, but to no disrespect to her by any means, because I aspire to be someone like her. One comparison that she points out that I think we can all kind of relate to is how she describes the body's physiological changes during pregnancy. She continues by saying, pregnancy in some ways is analogous to grief. We don't consider pregnancy as a disease, syndrome, or disorder, but we do not deny that pregnancy is physiologically demanding enough to receive medical attention. So why can't we see grief in the same way? After reading her thoughts, I thought it was interesting how pregnancy brings about life and grief with death. So I couldn't see how her comparison is too far off, given what these major life events do to our physical bodies. Now, the aim of this presentation is how to build a resilient body in the wake of grief, or as a caregiver when there may be some instances of anticipatory grief or preparing for the inevitable. As you may or may not know, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, we are not immune to death. We will have to face grief at some point in our lives, so we may as well learn about how our body naturally adapts through the inevitability of loss in any form. And in doing so, I'll talk about the mind-body connection and how grief can affect our core sources of energy like sleep, movement, and nourishment. So to start us off, I wanted to discuss how grief changes our energy levels by briefly going over the brain. For starters, I wanted to share what I think is an astounding fact about where our energy resources are distributed throughout our body. Even though the brain weighs about approximately 2% of our total body weight, the brain takes a whopping 20 to 25% of our metabolic resources. And that's just at baseline. Imagine how much more resources are needed to process the emotional and psychological toll of loss, which also does not consider the complexity of the type of loss itself. In Dr. Mary Frances O'Connor's first book, The Grieving Brain, she describes that grief is not just an emotional state. It's a learning process that unfolds in the brain, especially when we lose someone deeply woven into our sense of safety, identity, and daily life. I'll offer a physical example because sometimes a visible comparison helps drive the point home, but this point, unfortunately, also highlights how often we lack empathy toward emotional pain simply because we can't see, measure, or properly describe it. And we know grief is deeply emotional, of course, but it also affects the body in profound and often unconscious ways. Just because the wounds aren't visible to the naked eye doesn't mean they aren't there. So the example I bring to the table is a phenomenon called the phantom limb. Even though the physical limb is gone, the sensation, including intense pain, can still persist. A person may consciously know the limb is missing, but the brain continues to fire as if it were still attached. The neural pathways that once connected body to brain aren't severed in the way the limb is. Just because a limb is absent doesn't mean the brain's map of it suddenly disappears either. The map has to be relearned, restructured, and that takes time. This is why grief, too, is a form of learning. When we lose someone we deeply love, the relationship we shared with them, the routines, safety, and sensory memories was encoded in the brain. Their presence was mapped out, and now with their absence, their brain must slowly reconstruct its internal world without them in it. In the second part, I'll briefly discuss how our brain during grief affects our nervous system regulation. I won't be able to get into the specifics, but feel free to ask any questions that may arise at the end of the presentation. Simply put, the nervous system is the body's information highway from sensing, interpreting, and responding to everything inside of you, as well as your surrounding environment. The nervous system includes the brain and spinal cord, and it sends signals to every part of the brain, including organs like the heart, lungs, digestive system, and the muscles that help us stay alive. With our loved ones, and that includes our pets as well, you can feel a sense of calmness. It may feel like breathing is steady. Heart feels quiet. Muscles are relaxed, and there's a sense of mental clarity. This is because our loved ones help regulate our nervous system by providing safety and trust through years of attachment and building these intimate bonds. Whereas grief is in a state of alertness. It's the opposite of calmness, where breathing is shallow and quick. Heartbeats are louder and faster. Muscles are tense. There's a sense of hypervigilance, possibly brain fog and restlessness from the increased levels of anxiety, and you can feel more irritable or impatient. This state of alert is a necessary response by the body when it feels or thinks there's a perceived threat, which in grief can form by the unpredictability of the future and the lack of co-regulation from a lost loved one's presence. Even though the grief experience is dreadful and incredibly painful, this is the body's natural way of learning how to cope with the uncertainty. The brain's primary job is to keep us safe. It's constantly working to assess our environment, drawing on past experiences to protect us in the present and anticipate what might come next. And to quote Bessel van der Kolk, the author of the popular book, The Body Keeps a Score, he says, the most important job of the brain is to ensure our survival, even under the most miserable conditions. Everything else is secondary. In this case, attachment is our means of surviving. I won't go too deep into the details here, but feel free again to send an email if you'd like a more in-depth explanation. This is taken from the window of tolerance. And I just want you to note the 3 major energy states to make note of. So first, high alert, second, calm neutral, and third, low depressive energy states. In the image on the right top hand corner of the graph here, it reminds of this saying, and I'm curious if you've heard of this before. What comes up must come down. This refers to our energy and how our nervous system regulates itself. During grief, it's common to cycle through highs and lows, feeling hyper alert or anxious one moment and then heavy, withdrawn, or numb the next. Sometimes this shift happens within a single day. Other times it stretches across weeks. I've experienced both daily and monthly stretches of the extreme highs and the extreme lows. This isn't a sign that something's wrong. It's actually the body's natural response to the unpredictability of loss. And of course, grief isn't this simple curve shown here. Grief is very messy, as some would describe it. And now lastly, how does grief affect our day-to-day in terms of energy? As I mentioned earlier in my introduction, it's essential to care for our physical body during intense grief. The body is deeply impacted, often in ways we don't immediately notice. That's because it's in a constant state of alert, trying to compensate by making sense of an unfamiliar reality and reestablishing a new sense of safety and regulation. So let's walk through some of what research shows us about how grief affects the body, and I'll invite you to notice what feels familiar or true for yourself. For inflammation, when the body is inflamed, it doesn't just ache, it also shifts how we feel mentally. Interestingly, research now shows that there is a causal link between inflammation and depressive symptoms. When the body is inflamed, usually from prolonged heightened states of alertness, the body then needs to rest and go inward to replenish that lost energy, which may take on the form of depression, or in other words, deep rest. Now, have you ever noticed getting sick more often during intense stress or loss? That's because being in a state of alertness requires that important energy to be diverted into other areas of survival. As a result, our body decides not to use this precious energy to fight off viruses. Thirdly, our endorphin levels during grief, which are our body's natural pain relievers, can drop significantly. That's one reason why grief can feel physically painful. And I'm throwing out an assumption here. This could also be the reason behind why some may choose maladaptive forms of coping to alleviate that excruciating physical pain. And I only share this to offer more compassion and understanding without any sort of judgment. When grief throws us in survival mode, it's cortisol, the stress hormone, and adrenaline that are both the cause of this. This is to help keep our body alert and tense, as if we're bracing for the next blow. In the middle, serotonin, our feel-good brain chemical, which is produced mostly in the gut, is also reduced. You may notice digestion and appetite may change or disappear altogether, or even spike, depending on how energy was used previously and how the body is predicting energy needs moment to moment. Lastly, sleep disruption is often caused by grief, Without a restful night's sleep, we lose the ability to regulate mood, energy, hunger, and even memory recall. This is why some may feel foggy, irritable, or even disconnected. The body is extremely tired because it's unable to get the rest that it needs. So I'm not sharing this to alarm you, but to normalize what can feel like a very disorienting experience. These aren't signs of something being wrong. They're natural signs that your body is working hard to adapt. This is why prevention and nervous system support are so important during the early stages of grief, where it's most intense. When we care for the body early on, we can reduce the long-term toll of grief on our health and help ourselves and even others move through it with more compassion and steadiness. The aim is to prioritize early prevention before these natural symptoms escalate to regularity, in which they can form into chronic diseases like what we see with diabetes, heart disease, and so on. Okay, now that we know what happens to our bodies during grief, now we can discuss what we can do about it. Since I can't go into too much detail on the whole body approach, which entails nutrition, sleep, movement, etc. And also, as a side note, if you do want to learn more on the practical day-to-day health strategies, feel free to reach out, since Colorful Nutrition uses a whole body approach centered around what we call the 5 health pillars. This is a comprehensive framework designed to bring all aspects of well-being into harmony. But for right now, we'll just go through my favorite, how grief affects our relationship to food. So as I've mentioned earlier, our grieving body is usually when the nervous system is in a dysregulated state of either alertness or depression. When the grieving body does find itself in a state of calmness and is in a regulated state, this state is actually referred to as the rest and digest state. While the other alert or depressive forms you may recognize as fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. This is very telling of how our digestive systems respond to states of alertness or dysregulation. It's because we don't need to digest food in order for us to survive in the immediacy of that perceived threat, which then means energy is now concentrated on our vital organs like our heart, eyes, lungs, and muscles. Again, for either responding to the threat by choosing the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze response. Hence the importance of finding harmony between both our mental and physical capacities. Before I offer any sort of nutrition recommendation, I do want to preface that nutrition encompasses more than just the nutrients in foods and their function. While that's certainly important, in my experience working in food and health, this focus can sometimes overcomplicate things, which can add to the overwhelm, especially for someone who's just beginning to build body awareness. That's why I often suggest we start not with what we eat, but how we eat. As you've seen in my previous slide, rest and digest means the body needs to be in a calm and regulated state to optimally digest what we put in our mouths. To help bring this point home, I'm borrowing wisdom from someone I admire, Michael Pollan, an American writer who has written several books on food, including one called Food Rules, which you see here. In it, he offers simple yet powerful guidelines, not just about what we eat, but how we eat. Simple advice like try not to eat alone, or at least not all the time, where sharing a meal encourages conversation, pacing, and joy, and away from screens as well. Eat slowly by consciously chewing more, which supports digestion and allows our body to register fullness. Eat when you're hungry, not when you're bored. A reminder to check in with what we're truly needing in the time. There are many more, but they all return us to a more mindful, connected way of eating, one that nourishes not just the body, but the experience of being human. Now, I won't get too deep into the specifics of which nutrients are most important because A, we need a lot more time, and B, in reality, there are far too many variables at play, like someone's age, gender, existing diet, health history, activity patterns, weight, the list goes on and on. What I can offer from many years of working in this field are some steady basics, including having good sources of protein, animal or plant-based on your preferences. Try to fill your plate with more nutrient-dense foods, which are often fibrous and colorful, rather than energy-dense, which are typically high in refined sugars, salt, and saturated fats. Eat a wide variety of ingredients to support a wide spectrum of nutrients, including fermented foods. And whenever possible, eat your meals by chewing them rather than relying on liquid replacements. And to add, drink plenty of water. These are general nutrition guidelines to help anybody, whether they're in a stable place or not. But what happens when a person is grief-stricken? Our grief reshapes everything, including our relationship to food, which you'll get to see on the next slide. When grieving, even basic needs like eating can become difficult and complicated. There may no longer be enough energy to prepare something nourishing, or hunger may disappear altogether. For others, appetite can increase as the body searches for comfort. Food can lose its taste or pleasure. This often happens in early grief or shock when the senses feel dulled or muted. Hunger cues may become unreliable. Eating patterns can shift. Some meals are missed entirely. Others may become hungry at odd times. There's often a natural pull toward familiar foods, offering a sense of predictability and control. Comfort foods might be nutrient-rich or simply convenient. Both can serve a purpose, of which I invite you to ponder on what sort of comfort foods you tend to gravitate towards when you're stressed. Nutrition may no longer feel like a priority, especially when mental and emotional space is filled by other pressing obligations. Cooking or feeding oneself can become a daunting task when energy is low and motivation is difficult to grasp. Grief can also affect digestion. Gut discomfort or oral issues from constant clenching of the jaw may emerge under prolonged stress, adding another layer of complexity to eating and nourishment. And beyond what's happening inside the body, there are real external barriers too. Some people lose the person who used to cook for them, and with that, the rhythm and meaning of meals changes entirely. Grocery stores or the kitchen can feel triggering from the overwhelm. Eating alone can feel unbearable, and sometimes even eating with others feels risky, like you might break down at any given moment. Financial stress can make it harder to access fresh or nutritious foods. Interestingly, heightened emotions make us prone to gimmicky food marketing, which can influence our food choices. And we have to consider that some folks don't have the nutrition knowledge or cooking skills to fall back on, and grief isn't the easiest time to start learning and building a new set of skills. Aside from the changes in relationship to our food and nourishment, physically speaking, a good telltale sign of poor health is a sudden gain or loss of weight, meaning the rate of change. As an example, after my partner passed away, due to the shock and numbness, I lost about 10 pounds in 1 week's time, which was very noticeable. In comparison, a healthy fluctuation of weight is about 1 to 2 pounds per week. One suggestion I can offer, if possible, try your best during calm states of high functioning, high energy, and high motivation to try and keep stock of the essential needs in case an uncontrollable or unpredictable grief event may happen. During heightened states of distressing emotions, choosing healthy foods is near impossible, and this is coming from experience. For me, I've noticed every time I batch cook, it's nice to set aside a portion in the freezer. That way I can take a container out when my energy is feeling low and I'm not motivated to make something for myself to eat. A brief share, I love menudo, which is the tomato-based Filipino stew. Both menudo and sinigang is always in my freezer because I can eat this all day, every day, and is my way of comfort. I'm known also to put Post-it notes everywhere. As a gentle and loving reminder, I write notes to offer strength by telling myself I'm able to weather any storm despite feeling like I'm directly in the middle of the eye of the storm. Taking stock of nourishing meals is seen as a means to take care of my future self. So when I'm stricken by grief, which may happen at any given moment, I have my past Vera looking out for my future Vera, or in this case, present Vera. Similar to how the brain tries to protect itself in the future and present, I thought of knowingly doing the same. And this also reminds me of the cute little notes Leo, my late partner, would put onto my packed up lunches for school, which was an endearing way of showing love. This can be done for yourselves as well, or even if you're providing meals for someone who's currently grieving. Perhaps think about what sort of note you would like to put on top of their packed meals. If affordability or time constraints make it difficult to access safe, affordable, and nutritious meals, I truly encourage individuals and grief organizations alike to include food security programs as part of their resource toolkit. Throughout this presentation, I hope I've made it clear that nourishing the grieving body is not just supportive, it's vital. Good nutrition is foundational to maintaining physical and emotional well-being, no matter the person or their stage of grief. Just like we've discussed earlier, how moments of calm and higher energy can be windows for healing, community does the same in making a difference for those grieving and therefore matters. When grief feels unpredictable, a supportive community helps balance the highs and lows. Those in a more regulated state can offer a hand to others, and that reciprocity creates resilience. Because while we can't prevent the rainy days, we can ease their impact. And as a gentle note, some food security organizations may only offer the basics to meet energy needs. It's something to keep in mind as we advocate for quality and dignity in nourishment. I also wanted to shout out to United Way for their incredible food security initiatives and to Filipino BC for pushing their campaigns in tandem with United Way in response to Lapu-Lapu. Food isn't only about survival, it shapes who we are. We carry powerful memories tied to the meals we've eaten. Ask someone about their favorite dish, and you'll often see their face light up. That spark is more than nostalgia. It's proof that food touches emotion, memory, and identity all at once. This is one of the reasons I've stayed in the world of food for so long. It's never just functional. Cooking and eating can be acts of generosity, love, and care. They help us honor traditions, keep culture alive, and connect with parts of ourselves we might otherwise forget. I know this firsthand. After I lost Leo, I found myself craving Filipino dishes I grew up with. It was my source of comfort and familiarity. It gave me a sense of home and reminded me who I was before loss changed everything. When we're grieving, that connection to food can feel fragile. The meals we once loved might now feel empty, or they may hold bittersweet memories of someone who's no longer here. The act of cooking can feel too heavy, or for some, it becomes a way of feeling close to what's been lost. In either case, the process of making and sharing food can be a quiet lifeline, one that empowers us by encouraging self-care and nourishment when we need it the most, by being creative and spontaneous in the kitchen. I say trust your intuition, even in small, imperfect steps, like burning toasts, which I say are still acts of care and love. And cooking forces one to be present as well. And there's something magical about that. Cooking transforms raw ingredients into something greater, an alchemy that engages all five senses. The sound of sizzling, the aroma building, the colors changing, the texture shifting, the first taste. In grief, these sensory moments can gently remind us that we're still here, still capable of creating and receiving nourishment. When we learn to master not only what we eat, but how we eat and engage with our food, even in seasons of loss, we nourish both our bodies and our sense of self. And from that grounded place, we're better able to bring nourishment to the people around us, helping shape our immediate environment, our neighborhoods, and communities. And lastly, I want to bring this presentation back to my love for food and community. Just like the story I shared earlier, preparing a meal with complete strangers, bonding over teamwork in the kitchen, and sitting around a shared table, eating the food we prepare together as one, this kind of experience builds connection. It strengthens practical food skills, eases social isolation, and invites comfort, especially when grief so often pulls us into that loneliness. I understand that in some circles, even mentioning grief can feel distressing, even for the person experiencing it, which speaks to how much our society culture, and collective understanding still need to shift. But change, as most of this presentation is built on, takes time, which means our communities need both space and brave examples of what that shift can look like in practice. This is one example I've seen while exploring ways in which to weave both food and conversations of grief together. This is called the Dinner Party, inspired by an organization in the US that gathers young adults who've experienced loss to share a meal and talk about their grief together. It's not therapy, but it's therapeutic. And it's a beautiful model of how food can help ease us into talking about the hard stuff. The photo on the right is from a similar gathering, which I was lucky to create in my home, a pilot idea inspired by the dinner party. And you can see a card deck on the table, which is called the Death Conversation Game, created by someone who I am fortunately able to call a friend, who allowed me to share my intimate experiences with a group of complete strangers through their card deck. In these instances, I felt seen, heard, and supported as I shared my understanding of my grief journey, which played a huge role in my healing. I'm not saying that sharing meals or cooking together is a cure-all for grief, nor is it the sole form of support anyone needs. Grief is complex and deeply personal, and everyone's journey looks different. But food and community can offer a gentle entry point, a way to begin healing when words or traditional supports might feel too heavy or distant. Death is inevitable, and loss is something we will all have to face at some point and in any form as well. In that reality, food stands as a constant, a source of nourishment that sustains the body even when the spirit feels broken. Yet food is more than just its physical constituents. It's emotional, it's social, and it's spiritual too. Without acknowledging and understanding grief, without allowing space for its expression and integration, it's difficult to fully grasp what health means beyond the surface. How can we truly be well if parts of our emotional and physical selves remain unaddressed? How can we embrace life, its joys, its challenges, without facing the realities of loss that shape us? Food, in its simplest and most profound form, can connect us back to ourselves and to each other. It reminds us that even in grief, life continues, and care, both given and received, can nourish the whole person. And that's all, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. So I know there is a Q&A portion after this for the live audience, but for those tuning in from the future, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me with this email, vera@colorfulnutrition.com. Please note that there is a U in color and 2 L's in full. I, too, of course, had to pick a difficult name. I've also shared my website if you would like to learn more about the one-on-one services that I do offer for those who want to be more in touch with their physical health and body. And to add, for social media, I'm primarily on Instagram, where I've been sharing parts of my grief journey, thoughts, reflections, and themes that have surfaced along the way. I'm currently in the middle of a 30-theme creative series, but once I wrap that up, I'll be weaving in more content around food, health, and wellness alongside some collaborations I'm super stoked about. If you're curious, feel free to come along for the ride. And if LinkedIn is your jam, pun intended, feel free to connect through there as well. Okay, so now Happy, back to you to show more on BCBH's resources, and if we have time afterwards, questions. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Great job, Vera.
Very helpful.
That was, yeah, such a wonderful presentation, Vera. I'm just going to take a minute to digest all of that while I share my screen. All right. Vera, thank you again for enriching our, understanding how, grief impacts not just our body, but also our relationship to food and energy. That's such a wonderful unpacking of things. So for those of you who are joining here and hearing about BC Bereavement Helpline for the first time, I would like to share a little bit more about what we do. So BC Bereavement Helpline is a provincial-wide nonprofit organization that has been around since 1988. And we basically, our mission is to provide education, support, and advocacy for people going through grief and loss. Some of the programs of BC Bereavement Helpline you can see on the right of your screen. So we provide free helpline support. We have our helpline open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. from Mondays through Fridays. So if you know anyone who could benefit from the helpline, feel free to refer them to us. We also do provide an 8-week support groups, such in a traumatic loss event, or people who may have lost someone to traumatic loss, such as homicide, suicide, toxic drug poisoning, and pet loss support. We do also provide traumatic loss facilitation training for people who wanted to start their own support group. So if you are part of the organization or just looking to help support the community through starting your own support group, this is the training that we provide as well. Education such as this is made possible by the compassionate support of the people who believe in what we do, just like the one that we have today with Vera. So this is with the Ministry of Victim Services. So we thank them for their support to the work that we do. And, we also do some community events and outreach, and for people to know that they're not alone in their journey of grief. So, okay. Oops. This is a resource that I really wanted to share with you. Feel free to take a screenshot if you feel that this would help anyone. So this has our email, our website, our phone number that people can call, and also some of the 24/7 support if and when we're not available. So what happens when you call our helpline? So I did mention about, our time, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. There's going to be a compassionate volunteer that will answer your call. We wanted to highlight that this is not a clinical support, but it's more on the side of compassionate listening. We do offer practical help, and we are mindful that some of the details that are being shared to us are very personal, and so we take confidentiality at utmost. So why this matters to you? You may know someone who is going through grief and loss, and you do not know what to do. Know that BCBH is here to help. We can provide resources to anyone who may be needing it. We are maintaining more than 300 plus resources for any virtual support that people may need at the time of grieving and loss. So feel free to stay connected with us. We do send our newsletter every month for an event such as this. And also feel free to be involved if you feel like there's a calling for you to help people going through grief and loss. We need more volunteers with the amount of work that we do. I just want to share that we are only 2 people, paid in the BC Bereavement Helpline. Everyone else are volunteer. So it's a very small organization with a huge task of ensuring that no one in BC grieves alone. So please feel free to share your skills, your insights to how we can be a better BC Bereavement Helpline for the service of BC community. Some of the resources that you can find in our website, we do have our free PDF copy of our brochures that you can share with your community. There's also this TARE tab that you can post in your organization if people are, looking for resources, where to find us. Those are going to be here. At this moment, we are looking to have some volunteer brochure translators. So far, we have some translators from Hindi, Indonesian, and some of the common language spoken in BC. So if you can speak any other language than English, so please feel free to sign up to be our volunteer. We also have in your website some of the resources that you can find, some good to read related to grief that will elevate our knowledge about grief as well, or how to navigate it. In our website, we also do have a tribute that you can submit to someone you love or someone you wanted to honor. And please, if there's a resource that you can share with us, feel free to reach us out. There's going to be an extension of traumatic loss facilitation training that we are giving free for Filipino community and other allies that we have. So I want to highlight that this is not just limited to Filipino community. This is open to anyone who are willing to step forward in order for us to help, people who are impacted by the Lapu-Lapu tragedy or the Vancouver tragedy that happened in April. So these are the available dates that you can, sign up for. And feel free to scan the QR code or stay tuned in our website or even in our social medias, and these will be there. Wanna highlight that we are on the final leg of our grief walk. This is our summer support group grief walk that is happening in New Westminster Key area, and August 25 is the last grief walk for summer. So feel free to sign up as well. So it's happening from 6 p.m. to 7:15. We do wrap up at 7 p.m. And if you're lucky, you might be invited by Vera for some dinner. And we also do have this upcoming webinar that's going to be on September 17th. So as for those of you who've been joining our webinar as part of our Pagbangon, this is a Tagalog word for rise. Again, this is in support of, standing strong with Filipino community. We started with how we can navigate or grief in the lens of dreams and nightmares. That was hosted by Dr. Joshua Black. Now with Vera tackling about the nutrition and grief in relation to nutrition. Now we are moving into gentle movement and yoga. So this is going to happen on September 17th from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Want to be mindful that the last 30 minutes of this webinar on September 17 is an optional for people who wanted to stay for the chair yoga movement that we will be doing. So yeah. And we do have some upcoming in-person event as well. October 5 is a community pitch night with Surrey Eagles. So if you're interested in joining, free tickets will be provided for you. So feel free to reach out to us. October 25, there's a Rise again. This is the community in-person gathering, again, in response to the Lapu-Lapu event. So there's potential yoga session there, lots of things that will be going on, and some seminars as well. So please stay tuned and sign up when the sign up link is provided. So those are what's happening in BCBH. I really hope that you can consider being part of our community, and thank you so much for being here. I'm not sure if we still have time. Let me see. We could potentially get 2-3 questions. If people have questions, I'll stop sharing so we can see each other. Feel free to raise your hand if you have any questions for Vera. Susan, I see your hand is up. Let me.
Oh, you meant for Vera, or I had a question for you?
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. I registered for the last grief walk, and I was accepted, but I was waiting for confirmation of where to gather. And I emailed 3 people, but I didn't get any response. So I ended up canceling.
I'm really sorry about that, Susan. But we gather in the Tin Soldier in New Westminster Key area. So feel free to be there. I should be there. You should be able to see me. That's the gathering point.
But
so hopefully you can sign up again and we'll see you in person.
That's what I'm thinking. So where is it exactly? Because the key is big. Is it
if you can send me an email, I will go ahead and send you the details personally. Don't worry.
Okay.
I'll put that in the chat. Yeah, or I'll find your details in your registration, Susan.
Okay.
Is that okay? All right,
Yeah,
thank
okay. I
you.
don't want you to go through too much trouble. You're pretty busy.
No, it's okay. It's totally okay. Thank you so much for raising that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions for me or Vera? All right. Yeah, Marlene, go ahead.
Did you say, Vera, you offer one-on-one sessions on grief and physical stuff as a counselor?
Yeah, so that's basically what I do. So Colorful Nutrition has a 5 health pillars. So we look into food nutrition, physical health, mental health and emotional well-being, life components, and sleep as well. But physical health comprises of physical health, food and nutrition, and sleep. So that's something that I look into behaviorally because I think that's important in order for mental processing to take place. So that's where I get where I collaborate with mental health professionals. So then there's a whole body approach. But yes, so I
Do we
do.
book appointments with you as a counselor for that?
So I just want to remind, or not remind, just to preface with that I'm not a registered clinical counselor. So if it's grief informed, it would need to go with, and I have friends, really good colleagues that can help with that as well. But if it's a physical health, and if you want to get more aligned with what's happening through the body during grief or any stress response, I'm more than welcome to help. So anything that's more aligned with the physical body, I can help with that. Thank you for your question.
Thanks.
I was talking on mute. Maybe share on the screen, Vera, your details again so people can feel free to reach out to you in your social media.
Sure. Okay, that's gonna give me technical difficulties here. I'm proficient at food, but not technology, so give me one sec.
While Vera is pulling that up, I just really want to thank everyone for taking time to be with us today. This is an amazing journey, especially dealing with how we are responding and supporting the community of Filipino and other communities impacted by the Lapu-Lapu event. So thank you so much for being here.
Oop. Let's see, share. Hopefully you see that. Thank you everybody for being here. I hope you learned a few things here and there about how grief affects the body and how to nourish yourselves through food, connection, community, and all of the other things really involved with health. So feel free to reach out if questions come up at any point. Sometimes there are aha moments that come later on during the day. I'm kind of like that. I'm a simmer type of person after getting an overload of information. Again, I love food puns, so if you have any, just feel free to also send me through email. I love them. Yeah, feel free again to reach out at any point. I love having these types of conversations because, to be quite honest, I don't think we have them enough. So I think it's really important to normalize the grief experience and to increase grief literacy so then everybody can feel heard and seen through some challenging times. So thanks again, everybody. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules. It's 8 o'clock, so dinner time. So that matters. So thank you again.
All right. Thanks, everyone.